What's going on, everyone? So welcome to another director ranking list. If you're new to my channel, I've done many different directors where I rank their movies from worst to best. I've done David Lynch, David Fincher, Wes Anderson, and a slew of other directors. You can check that down below. But guys, you clicked on the video, you know who you're getting. Ridley Scott, man. He's done 25 movies. I'm ranking his movies from 25 being his worst to 1 being his best. Now keep in mind, I'm not including TV shows, documentaries, short films. None of that. None of that is included, just his movies. So with all that exposition aside, let's get started. So to kick things off, my number 25 is A Good Year. The title might be called A Good Year, but certainly not a good movie. This movie was honestly very disappointing, especially given the talent involved, both in front of the camera and behind the camera. Now, my thing with this movie especially is given the fact that I love the fact that Ridley Scott's taking on a different genre, but I just felt like the script and the character development just weren't there. This movie felt very mediocre and disappointing for me personally as a fan of the director. And that's why it's my number 25. My number 24 is White Squall, which the interesting thing about this movie is that before I started filming this video, I was literally thinking, it's funny, White Squall reminds me so much of of course, Top Gun. And the interesting thing is that Top Gun was directed by Tony Scott, the brother of Ridley Scott, who directed this movie. Now, White Squall is a movie I found to be disappointing, honestly, kind of like A Good Year. I liked it a little bit more than A Good Year, and I think that has to do with, towards the end of the movie, it does pick up a little bit of steam. Haha, fun fact. This movie is a little too long, though. I think that it's got a lot of fat. I think they could have cut things down a little bit. And also, I don't think some of the things that are in this movie has aged well, including the messages. But it's a movie that if someone were to say that they liked the movie, I would definitely understand why they liked it. It's just, me personally, I wasn't a fan of the movie. I wanted to like it, but alas, here we are at number 24. So that was my number 24. My number 23 is Someone to Watch Over Me. I'm not even going to lie. I saw this movie like a month or two ago in preparation to do this video, and barely remember it. I know it's like a cop movie, it's a thriller movie, but it's so forgettable. The reason why it's, number 23 and not 24 or 25, it's because although it's forgettable, it's still kind of harmless. Like, it's a movie that you watch and you're just like, oh, an hour later I forgot that I watched it. Versus White Squall and A Good Year, you remember certain things about it and just like the wasted potential. And I think that the fact that this movie is forgettable and not like, wasted potential, I think that's why it's a little bit higher. Still disappointing, still gets the same rating as those other two movies, but I figured I would be a little lenient on this movie. I do also know some people that like this movie. Again, I get it, but I personally am not a fan of this movie. And that's why it's number 23. Number 22 is a movie I feel very mixed about, and that's G.I Jane. G.I Jane's a movie with Demi Moore, and the thing with this movie is that there are some very progressive ideas and themes in this movie. But then at the flip of the coin, there's also ideas and themes that haven't aged that well. So me as a 2020 viewer, I feel conflicted because I feel like when this movie came out, it was probably more so progressive, but now you just kind of realize that there are certain things aren't in quite that tune, whilst other things are still aged well. So I just feel mixed. I found it disappointing though because I thought it had a great premise, but I don't think it fully capitalized on it. And again, that could just be watching it as a 2020 viewer. Maybe in 1997 people took to it better. I'm not sure, but for me personally, that's why it's number 22. So now we're at number 21. Number 21 is Body of Lies. And I'm not going to lie, I was so excited to watch this movie. It had been on my watch list for quite some time. And this was a good enough reason to watch it because, ranking Ridley Scott's movies. And not going to lie, I found this movie to be very underwhelming. I was bored by it. I hate that word. And I know if you're, someone that's been subscribed to me for a while, usually when I say that, I truly mean it because I try not to say it that often. Because if I say it about every movie that I give like a 2 out of 5 star rating or 2.5, it's like, okay, well, I need more. My thing with this movie is that it's trying to be like all Bourne Identity, Bourne Supremacy, Bourne Ultimatum, but it falls flat. Unsurprisingly, I mean, given the talent involved, you think it wouldn't. It's got, a talented writer, talented director, talented actors. So it's like, what went wrong? And I think it just comes down to, one, it hasn't aged well. Again, all these years later, you can watch it and literally say that it's a copycat of the Bourne trilogy. But more importantly, I feel like the ideas and characterization of these people just isn't fully realized in the scope of grand scheme of things. And it's unfortunate, given, again, the talent involved. But not the worst movie, but not exactly good, in my opinion. And that's why it's my number 21. My number 20 is a movie that I know a lot of people are going to have higher up on their list. I personally thought it was just like, eh. And that's The Duelist. So The Duelist is a movie that was Ridley Scott's debut movie. And I think as a debut, it works really well. But also I think that because I watched it late in the game, like this was one of his last movies that I saw before being able to say, yes, I saw every single one of his movies. I think the thing with The Duelist is that there are a lot of ideas that aren't fully formed in the movie that later on in his career ended up getting formed more so. And I think because I've seen better versions of what was tackled in this movie is why I didn't fully like it. I appreciate what it was going for, but I just think it wasn't fully able to capitalize on it. And it makes sense though, because it is his first movie, and as a debut feature film, it's fine. But, you know, as a Ridley Scott movie, as someone that's seen all of his movies, it's in the middle of his filmography. It's not bad by any means, but it's not good, in my opinion. So that's my number 20. My number 19 is a movie that I need to rewatch, and that's Exodus, Gods and Kings. I saw this movie 6 years ago, like in theaters, and I wasn't a fan of it, but I've changed a lot. You know, in the last 6 years, I've changed a lot. My views on movies, and just biblical movies specifically, has changed so much over that time. So I feel like I'd appreciate this movie more so, especially because the filmmaking is really good. I mean, Ridley Scott is great in terms of visual storytelling, and there's imagery that even 6 years later I remember. And it is different, you know, with the material that it's focusing on. But I'm not going to lie, even if I rewatch it, I know that I'm still going to be faced with the fact that there is whitewashing this movie, which I wasn't aware of 6 years ago. I just wasn't, you know, knowing about it. Like, I heard things about it, but I didn't really take it to heart. But 6 years later, I've changed. I'm kind of like, yeah, that's an issue. And I know what many of you are probably thinking. Yeah, but you're the same guy that liked Johnny Depp in The Lone Ranger. That's true. That is true. But hear me out. With Exodus, it's not one person. It's everybody. And I think that's more problematic than just one person. What I'm trying to say is I'm conflicted with this movie either way. I feel like I do need to rewatch it just to give it a second chance. And that's why it's a little bit higher up than all these other movies. I'm not saying it's a great movie, but I do want to give it a second chance because movies that Ridley Scott's done that have been on the lower end, I kind of have liked. And you'll notice that as we get low, you know, higher up on the list. So just bear with me, guys. So that was my number 19. My number 18, speaking of movies that got, you know, lambasted by critics, The Counselor. The Counselor is my number 18. And the thing with The Counselor is that they have a director's cut, which adds like 20 minutes of footage. I want to watch that. You know, maybe I should have watched it before doing this video, but I just was thinking in my mind, I was like, you know what? I'm going to be reviewing the theatrical one because that's the only one I've seen. I saw it one time, and I didn't like it. The reason why I want to give the director's cut a chance is because there are very much so memorable scenes in the theatrical cut. You know, the scene with Cameron Diaz with the vehicle. Yeah, that's going to stick with you forever. The scene with someone, you know, on a motorcycle driving by and that scene's memorable. So there's memorable scenes in this movie, but I just remember 6 years ago watching it and feeling like it was quite dull. I don't know if that's still going to be the case because, again, I have changed as a viewer, but you know, a lot of critics have also said that, and so that's why I usually agree with them more so than audiences. But I am curious about giving it a second chance. That's why I give it a higher rating than Exodus, Gods and Kings, because it's got a better cast, and at the same time, I feel like I'll probably like that maybe a little bit more than Exodus. I don't know, who knows? Maybe several months from now I'll watch this video and be like, wow, Chad, you should have ranked Exodus, Gods and Kings over The Counselor, or vice versa. So, who knows? We'll see. But for now, that's why it is my number 18. Number 17 is Hannibal, which is the one that stars, you know, obviously Anthony Hopkins. Unfortunately, not Jodie Foster. She wasn't in it. They replaced it with Julianne Moore, and I absolutely love Julianne Moore. I do. But I feel like you shouldn't make a sequel unless you have both actors, which they didn't. And then on top of that, it's unfortunate because the script writing is a lot weaker. And the interesting thing, even more so, is that this is something that gets focused on in the TV show Hannibal. And the TV show Hannibal does it 20,000 times better. And that's the interesting thing about this movie, is that you see the elements there, but it just wasn't fully able to be capitalized on it. Now, don't get me wrong, the box office, it really hit stride with the box office. But I'm saying in terms of critically speaking, it's a movie that had a lot of potential, and I see the themes of basically what could have been a great movie, but alas, unfortunately, here I am saying that it's a middle-of-the-road movie, and given the fact that it's a sequel to Silence of the Lambs, that's kind of disappointing. But not a terrible movie by any means, and that is why it's my number, 17. My number 16 is Legend, which, listen, Legend, if you go on my Letterboxd, I gave it a low rating, and that's true. Like, I gave it like a 2.5 out of 5. I do think it has its flaws, but it has incredible music. I love the theatrical cut score. I think it's so good. I do think that cinematography is on point. Some of the visual effects are great. Some of the makeup's great. Both of those things, though, also do have like a flip of a coin of that sometimes it's not good, but that's the thing. When this movie is great, it's great. When this movie is a drag, and sometimes it is, it's a drag. And that's the thing with this movie. You just got to keep that in mind. I know it has a cult following, but I thought it was middle of the road, but at the same time, man, that score is incredible, man. Let me tell you. And that's why it is my number 16. My number 15 is Black Rain. I honestly don't have much to say this other than it stars Michael Douglas. And Michael Douglas is fine in it. I saw this recently, and for the life of me, I thought it was I don't really have much else to say. It's strange, too, because I know a lot of people, including my friend group, that do like Black Rain. And I understand and respect that. I think I just personally was underwhelmed by it because of Ridley Scott's other movies. And I know what you guys are thinking, right? Number 15, and I'm still saying that, but bear with me. I do like Ridley Scott, but at number 15, I just thought Black Rain was okay. Not much to it. And number 14 is 1492, Conquest of Paradise. I like this movie. I don't know how accurate it is in terms of historically speaking, but let me tell you something. The score in this movie, similar to Legend, is just breathtaking. I can listen to the score of 1492 anytime. What Vangelis did is just extraordinary. I absolutely dug it. It was incredible. It also is just so interesting to see a take on Christopher Columbus. I feel like he's someone that doesn't get much focus on, and I understand why, like looking back, like he was kind of a jerk. But at the same time, it's still interesting to have a historical figure that doesn't really get much focus on in terms of like movies, get its own movie. The movie is long for sure. It is kind of sometimes slowly paced, but it is beautifully well shot. It's got a great score. It is very well directed, and it's unique. It's a movie that you can honestly say, I haven't seen anything like that movie. It's enjoyable for sure. Would definitely recommend. So that's my number 14. My number 13 is All the Money in the World, which the thing with All the Money in the World is that originally Kevin Spacey was going to be in it, and Christopher Plummer replaced him, obviously, and I thought Christopher Plummer was great. I feel like he's the reason why this movie, though, works so well, because although this movie is well filmed, well directed too. Ridley Scott does such a great job directing, and it's crazy the fact that he was able to, fast pace all the directing with the replacement of Christopher Plummer, but it's a very well shot movie. It feels very thriller-esque in that there are a lot of thriller sequences, but first and foremost, it's a drama, and I feel like the drama is good, but it's not like 100% compelling. Like, you're not sitting back like saying, wow, this is incredible, this is crazy stuff. You're sitting back watching and being entertained, and on those levels, it's good entertainment. Like, it's a movie that I think is good, and I would definitely recommend it, and that's why it's my number 13. Coming at number 12 is Prometheus. That's right, I own this movie on Blu-ray. I like this movie. I know a lot of people that, give it a lot of slack, but I do like it. Not gonna lie, the last couple times I've seen it, my rating has decreased a little bit each time. I think it's just because I've started realizing that the pacing, upon rewatching, just doesn't really work for me. But in terms of visual effects, cinematography, sound design, sound mixing, acting, in terms of all that, this movie rocks. I like it. It's not my favorite in the Alien franchise, but it's definitely up there. I do have to say I would recommend it. It has its fair share of flaws for sure, but nonetheless, it's still entertaining. And I do like that, yes, I have a problem with the pacing, but at the same time, I do appreciate when a blockbuster comes out and takes its time, so it's the conflict in me. Like, I like this movie, but I still have conflict with it. And that is why it is my number 12. My number 11 is a movie I really do need to own, and my number 11 is Matchstick Men. You probably haven't really heard of this movie, but a little bit of background. It's the movie with Nicolas Cage. Nicolas Cage kills it in this movie. He's very, very funny. And when he needs to be, the drama is really effective. There's a twist or two also towards the end that I should have seen coming. I didn't, but I was really impressed with what it was doing. And, it's a movie that I have it higher up because, the entertainment value is so much higher than, like, other movies on this list that I've already named. I like the movies that I named, prior to doing this one, but I feel like Matchstick Men is just really good and really underrated, and that's why it's my number 11. Now we've got those out of the way, let's talk about the top 10, the nitty gritty. So all these 10 I love, some of them I love more than others, but let's kick it off with my number 10, which I think is highly underrated. Number 10 is Robin Hood, 2010. I own this movie on 4K. Not only does it look great on 4K, but I think this movie is criminally underrated. I actually did a review on my channel of this movie with why I love it so much. I love the villain. I love the rendition, the grittiness of this movie, the action scenes, the way it's shot, the score. I really also love the costume design, the production design, the makeup. There's just so much that I love about this movie. I am genuinely a huge fan of this movie. I've seen pretty much every single Robin Hood movie. This is my Robin Hood. That people are always like, this is mine. This is my Robin Hood. I love the 2010 version, and that is why it's my number 10. My number 9 is, a movie that probably a lot of people have higher up. And my number 9 is Black Hawk Down, which I think is a really good movie. I respect it because it was groundbreaking when it came out, and in terms of like filmmaking, Ridley Scott brings out the big guns, so to speak. His filmmaking in this movie is so on point. I absolutely love how he shot this movie, the color palette, the color grading that he utilized. It's really good stuff. It's got a very powerful score. The non-stop action is also thrilling and exhilarating at the same time. The reason why I have it higher up than Robin Hood is because I do feel like in terms of like culture, it has more of a cultural impact that I can respect. I did actually used to own Black Hawk Down, but I feel like upon multiple viewings, I realized that I respect the movie more than I can say that, hey, this is a rewatchable movie. I like it. Maybe I'll give it another shot in a couple years, but I watched it like a couple months ago in preparation for this video, and it's good. I respect it a lot, but I don't fully love it and embrace it. That's why it is my number 9, though. Still a good movie. Number 8 is The Martian. Listen, I know some people that don't like this movie for some reason. Is it a little implausible in some, capacity? I suppose so. I mean, I'm not an astronaut, so I'm not going to sit here and tell you the physics of everything. But I will say it's based on a book, and from what I've heard from certain individuals, apparently it's pretty accurate to the book. I don't know. I don't really read. But I will say that the cast is great in this movie. Matt Damon kills it. The balance of drama and comedy really works in this movie. And, you know what? Sure, it jerks off NASA for sure, but... who doesn't get a hard on for NASA? Yeah, I think I'm going to end it like that. So that is my number 8. Now, my number 7 is similar to Robin Hood. This is another movie I think is criminally underrated. I also happen to own on 4K. My number 7 is Alien Covenant, which I just recently rewatched again. I really dig this movie. I think it's very underrated. I actually personally didn't like this movie the first time I saw it. I saw a video, Patrick Williams, giving him a shout out, even though he probably doesn't even know me. But I saw Patrick Williams' video on Alien Covenant, and I was convinced to give this movie a second chance because my issues with the movie was that the score was too similar to the original, like it took way too much from the original. And yes, it does have callbacks from the original score, but it has enough original score that is really heart-pumping and thrilling to where it's like, wow. And also, this movie is a great mad scientist entry. Like, I do think this movie is very underrated. And I think also I did it with my girlfriend where we watched Prometheus and then Alien Covenant and then Alien. And I do have to say, I do think Prometheus and then Alien Covenant going into Alien is a great thing to do. Alien Covenant works beautifully. I think it's such a mesmerizing, beautiful, but also gut punch of a movie. Like, the ending is very disturbing when you actually think about it and sit down. It's great. Michael Fassbender is also incredible in this movie. I think in terms of filmmaking, it is outstanding. And some people say that, you know what, people do stupid things in this movie. You know what? Haven't you realized humans are kind of stupid? Let's be honest here. When in terms of fear, if there's fear, humans are going to not be able to step up. That's just how life is. Not everyone can do that. But yeah, I really think this movie is very underrated. That's why it's my number 7. My number 6 is a movie that I really should own on Blu-ray. I don't. I really should own it though, and that's Thelma Louise. I really like this movie. I think this movie is great, especially the ending scene. Great stuff. But this movie was ahead of its time. I mentioned G.I Jane with how that movie. I felt very conflicted with whether it was like female empowerment or if it wasn't like progressive or not, and how some stuff has aged well, some hasn't. But Thelma Louise has aged beautifully. It's a very progressive movie. It is very female centric, and it's so awesome to see that Ridley Scott was able to do that. Focus on 2 females that was in a pretty much great movie. This is overall a very well-made movie. It also gave Brad Pitt the start of his career. Overall, it's just a very entertaining movie that also has meat under the skin, and I really dig this movie. And that's why it's my number 6. My number 5, I still got to pick up on 4K. As of right now, I only have it still on Blu-ray. But my number 5 is American Gangster. Now, American Gangster, I want to emphasize, I have actually not seen the theatrical cut. I have only seen the director's cut, which is 2 hours and 57 minutes. So it's 19 minutes longer than the theatrical cut. And also, I wanted to mention, actually, since we're on the subject, I'll talk about this in a moment. But let me bring it out. With Robin Hood, I've seen both cuts, but I would recommend the director's cut, because the director's cut has 15 added minutes, and they really do add to the movie a lot. It's very important that you watch the director's cut of Robin Hood. And same goes with American Gangster. Having seen the director's cut and only that, I can't imagine them taking anything out, which is why I can't watch the theatrical cut, because I feel like it would really damper the experience. That's just me personally. I think American Gangster is such a great movie. It's very unpredictable, and at the same time, it features incredible performances, very well shot scenes, orchestrated action scenes that are very palpable, and just an overall sense of importance. I really dig this movie. I think it's highly underrated, not only in Ridley Scott's filmography, but just in general with people talking about it. I think there should be more discussion on this movie, and yeah, that's why it's my number 5. Listen, my number 4, before I bring it out, my number 4 is a movie that I know a lot of people are going to be angry that I have it at number 4 and not higher, but what can I say? I love this movie, but still, I thought there were 3 other movies that were better. My number 4 is Alien. I know. People are like, what? Listen, I love Alien. Alien's a great movie. I'm not going to lie, Robin Hood, American Gangster, I specifically am just like, director's cut. That's it. Alien, I always forget whether I like the director's cut or the theatrical cut. I always forget. This last time that I saw the theatrical cut, and I really liked it, but I do think that maybe the director's cut I like better, because I feel like it's a little bit faster, and I'm fine with slow-paced movies, for sure. I really appreciate them, but I felt like slow-paced movies, sometimes you really have to be in the mood for it, and especially with a movie like Alien, you really have to be in the mood for a slow burn. But the director's cut apparently makes it a little bit faster, and maybe that's the version I like a little bit more. But nonetheless, I love this movie. There's a reason why I own it on 4K. I think it looks incredible. Definitely one of the best 4K entries I've seen. I think it's a really, really good-looking movie. And yeah, that's why it's my number 4. My number 3 is easily the most criminally underrated movie on this list. Yes, even more so than Robin Hood, in my opinion. And my number 3 is Kingdom of Heaven. Kingdom of Heaven, let me emphasize, kind of like Robin Hood, kind of like American Gangster, the director's cut. Get a load of this, because I don't have it off memory. So, the theatrical cut was 144 minutes long. Long, right? Well, the thing is, they took out like 45 minutes. Ridley Scott wanted a 3-hour and 10-minute movie, and instead the studio butchered and gutted his movie, and that's why his movie failed at the box office and with critics. However, you watch the director's cut, holy cow, the director's cut is incredible. Some of the best filmmaking you will ever see of the 2000s. This is just incredible. The scope, the intimate moments in this movie, the acting, the messages, the themes. This is a very powerful movie. And the Crusades don't get that much focus. Are there liberties had? Sure, I'm sure that there are. But this is just a rock solid, incredibly well-made movie that just is also incredibly entertaining. I would highly recommend you watch Kingdom of Heaven. I don't feel like a lot of people talk about it because they look on Rotten Tomatoes and they see like a 37% rating, and it's like, well, that's a theatrical cut. I'm sure if they had a rating for the director's cut, it'd probably be in the 90s. I kid you not. This is a masterpiece in my opinion. I absolutely love this movie, and I think that it definitely deserves a watch. And that's why it's my number 3. My number 2 is by no means underrated. In fact, some people for some reason think it's overrated. I completely disagree. I think my number 2 is incredible. And that's why my number 2, it's Gladiator. Yep, I also own on 4K. If you probably haven't guessed, I love Ridley Scott movies in 4K. Gladiator is a great movie. I absolutely love it. I think it's an incredibly entertaining movie, but more importantly, I think that the themes and messages, and this is just something, that Ridley Scott movies I really like, the themes and messages really resonate with me. I really am able to appreciate them, so much. And I also love the acting. I think Joaquin Phoenix and Russell Crowe kill it. The score by Hans Zimmer is just out of this world. It is seriously one of the best scores that you'll ever listen to. The original songs in this movie also are incredible. It's very well shot. Sure, it does take, the way it shoots the action scenes, sure, it does take a little bit from Saving Private Ryan, but I nonetheless still love the way that they shot it. I know some people that don't. That's unfortunate, but I personally love this movie, and especially knowing the behind the scenes of this movie, this is incredible that the movie was able to be as great as it was. Now, listen, I love the theatrical cut of this movie, but I'm gonna advertise another director's cut of Ridley Scott. So this comes with the theatrical cut, 155 minutes, and then extended, 170 minutes. Ever since I watched the extended cut, I've only stuck with the extended cut. Those 15 minutes really are added to a very effective way. I would highly recommend you check out the director's cut. It's great. It's great stuff. And that is my number 2. So my number 1, you probably guessed it by now. I know a lot of people have it as their number 1 too, and it's a flawed masterpiece. What's there to say? My number 1 is Blade Runner, the final cut. So I've seen the theatrical cut. The theatrical cut has the voiceover. It's good. Not great. It definitely does damper the experience overall in a little bit. But I've also seen the director's cut, which it's really good. It's great even. The only difference between the director's cut and final's cut is the color palette. They changed the color palette and color grading a little bit. And I think the final cut is the definitive version, honestly. I think it's a great looking movie. This was one of the first 4Ks that I picked up. And I am so glad I did because it looks outstanding on 4K. I owned it on Blu-ray. I owned it on DVD. 4K is the best way to watch this movie. And, I'm not advertising another director's cut. Instead, I'm advertising a final cut. Blade Runner, the final cut, is the version you need to watch. It is the definitive version of Blade Runner. And I think this is a movie that you really can't watch just once. You have to watch it multiple times so you can fully appreciate it. I didn't love it the first time I saw it, but it always stuck with me. The imagery, the ideas, the messages, it just all stuck with me. And that's why I came back to it. And I'm so glad I did because I come back to this movie at least once a year. It's a great movie. One of the best ever made, in my opinion. And that's why it's my number 1. Now, if you're new to my channel, what I always like to do is I like to talk about the director after ranking his movies, on if I like him or not, and his style and everything. So, I love Ridley Scott. As you can tell, not all 25 of his movies I love, but the movies of his that I love, I really love. And even his movies I think were disappointing, it's not unwatchable. I haven't given any of his movies under a 2 out of 5 star rating. But he's a director that I love, the fact that his director's cut are long, but at the same time very effective with what they're trying to achieve. And I feel like most of his director's cuts do that. The only one I didn't watch was Legend, and that was just because of the score. I heard the score was better than the theatrical cut than that, and also I need to watch the Counselor's extended cut, but he's the master of director's cuts. That's all there is to it. You see director's cut, and it's a Ridley Scott movie, you should probably watch it. He's a very talented filmmaker, one of the best, because he manages to both entertain you with his blockbuster, popcorn-munching scenes, but at the same time, he also makes you think. He has these thought-provoking movies that really get under your skin in a way that really is effective. I think he's one of the best. I really like him, and I am very curious to your guys' thoughts. With the ranking. Let me know your ranking, though. Rank all 25 of his movies. If you haven't seen all 25, that's fine. Rank the ones that you have seen in the comment section down below. And I'm also going to be doing other ranking lists, obviously. This is something that I'm going to be continuing to do because I love doing it. You guys seem to like it, too. So we're all in this together. But, guys, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And as always, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget the subscription, notification bell, and I'll catch you guys later.